Hello everyone, I'm Zood. Today I'd like to talk about how to describe hazards properly. In my opinion, there are a couple of simple rules that we should follow when describing hazards. The first one is to clearly highlight the hazard's dangerous characteristics. For example, we know that a forklift can be a hazard, but if we just describe it like that, it's too general and it doesn't explain why it's dangerous. So instead, we should describe its specific hazards. For example, a moving forklift or a forklift that can tip over. So these descriptions immediately tell us what the actual risk is. And besides that, some components on the forklift can also present hazards. For example, with battery powered forklift, the damaged insulation can expose electrical parts such as wiring, and lithium battery can overheat if it's not working properly. So these descriptions are the true sources of potential injury, and that's what we need to focus on when describing hazards. The second rule is that each hazard should be linked to a consequence. A hazard is a source with potential to cause injury and ill health. So, by definition, every hazard should cause some kind of incident or injury. And in the hazard identification table, there's usually a column for consequence. For example, a moving forklift can strike a pedestrian, and a forklift tipping over can crush the driver if he tries to leave the cab. And exposed live electrical wiring can cause electrical shock. Overheating lithium battery can start a fire. So in most cases, one hazard should be clearly correspond to a consequence. In most cases, one hazard should be clearly correspond to one main consequence. If you are not sure what the consequence is, that usually means that the hazard's dangerous characteristics are not described clearly. For example, a load carried by a forklift might be a hazard, but what kind of consequences does it actually create? So it's not very clear. There are some possible outcomes. The load could be too long, which means it can strike a pedestrian, or the load could be stacked too high on the forks, creating a risk of falling and hitting someone below. So when the consequence is not clear, it's usually a sign that the hazard's dangerous characteristics are not described clearly enough. The third rule is to explain the cause of the hazard. In other words, to describe what creates its dangerous characteristics. So in this table, we can add another column to capture the causes of each hazard. For example, why is a moving forklift considered a hazard? There are many reasons. It might be speeding, or the drivers could be fatigued, or their view could be blocked. So any of these factors can turn a forklift into a hazard. And similarly, why does a forklift tip over? So the possible reason could be it didn't slow down while turning or because of the slippery floor. So there's a question, why do we need to add causes of each hazard? This is because when we understand the causes of each hazard, it will become more easier for us to develop targeted control measures. So when we ask our workers to identify hazards, we'd better also ask them to write down any of these causes they are aware of, because this will help us control the hazards more effectively. The last one rule is to describe the hazard in a way that it's easier for workers to understand. As long as they can understand it, that's what matters the most. So, for example, when we identified the hazard about the welding machine, one item is a power cable on the ground. But I think some workers might describe the hazards like this: tripping over a power cable. Though this might sound more like a consequence, but it actually describes the same dangerous condition as the one above. And more importantly, it's much easier for workers to understand. Let's take another example. Someone's walking on a step ladder. So what's the hazard when someone's walking on a ladder? It's gravitation, right? But um, most people wouldn't describe it that way, and I don't think some workers would understand that. So we we should describe like falling from a ladder. Again, this sounds more like a consequence, but people immediately understand what the danger is. So when we describe hazards, we don't need to be overly concerned about using the perfect language, perfect technical language. So what most important is that we use a language that the workers can immediately understand what the hazard is and where the danger is. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for listening. And if you are interested in learning English for EHS, please scan this QR code and join our group. Okay, I'll see you in the next episode.